Greetings of the day, everyone. Today we'll be discussing the extract based questions and the questions carrying 2 marks for the chapter Law String Stories of Stolen Childhood. Now let us start. The first extract starts with Go to school, I said glibly, realizing immediately how hollow the advice must sound, and it ends with He would have a hard time believing it. Question 1 on this paragraph is Why did the author feel embarrassed? The author felt embarrassed because she gave Sahib false hope. She said that if she makes a school, when Sahib responds that he has no school in his village, and if they make one, he will definitely go. And to this remark, the author says that if I make a school, will you come? And Sahib responds that yes, I will surely come. So the author feels embarrassed on this remark. On this remark, and on the top of that, firstly she advised him to go to school, which is not possible for a boy like Sahib. She gave Sahib false hope, and on top of that, Sahib actually believed that the author would make a school for him and it would start within 3 or 4 days. Question 2. What is ironic in Sahib's name? As we come to know from the chapter, Sahib's full name is Sahib-e-Alam. Sahib-e-Alam means the Lord of the Universe. This meaning is totally in contrast to his condition. Sahib is a rag picker, is extremely poor, wears discolored clothes, walks barefoot on the streets of Simapuri. All of these conditions are totally in contrast with the meaning of his name, Lord of the Universe. If he would have been aware, if he would have been educated and known the meaning of his name, he would have a very difficult time believing it. Question 3. Which word in the extract means thrive? Thrive, the word thrive means to grow, to prosper, to develop, and the word abound also means to thrive, to exist in large numbers or amounts. Why did the author find her advice hollow? The author found her advice hollow because a boy like Sahib, who belongs from the family of rag pickers, was extremely poor. It was not possible for him to go to school. So, giving him the advice that go to school, it was a very hollow advice. It was a very vague and senseless advice. That is why the author found her advice hollow. Hollow basically means without any meaning, without any foundation or logic. The second paragraph starts with, Why aren't you wearing chappals? I asked one. And it ends with, I wonder if this is only an excuse to explain away a perpetual state of poverty. Question 1. How does the author comprehend children walking barefoot on the streets? This question basically means that how does author explain children walking barefoot on the streets? Author को क्या समझ में आता है ये देखकर कि जो बच्चे हैं वो नंगे पाँव सड़कों पर क्यों घूम रहे हैं? So the author deemed it to be a tradition. From the text, if we refer to the text of the chapter, we come to know that author thinks that being barefoot is a tradition in India. Whenever we go to a religious gathering, attend a religious function, even poor people are always barefoot. So, she thinks that maybe this is a tradition. But this is an excuse. This is a very vague and senseless excuse to explain the constant poverty, and it explains the negligence on the part of us, the privileged people. So this is the way the author explains children walking barefoot on the streets. Question 2. Why is the boy wearing different shoes on both his feet? Now, the boy who is a rag picker friend of Sahib, he is wearing different shoes on both his feet. He must have found the shoes in the garbage lot, or someone would have given him the discarded shoes of some privileged boy. The reason being he is wearing two different shoes, he is happy to wear two different shoes on his feet, is that he wants to wear the shoes only. He doesn't want to see the quality of the shoes, and he does not want to see their condition, but he only wants shoes on his feet. It shows us his extreme poverty and the need and the want, the hunger to be better, the hunger to get better conditions, better education, better food and better shelter. Question 3. What image do you form of the children in the story? The children in the story, basically in this story, that is, sometimes I find a rupee in the garbage can, we come to know that children are very simple, they are outspoken, and due to their condition, due to the extreme poverty in which they are living, they cannot fulfill all of their needs. They have to wear discolored clothes, they have to do rack picking, and they have to do all the things that children at their age should not have been doing. Question 4. Why does author's remark on children being barefoot signify? This remark basically signifies that how society, how us the privileged people, we have always been ignorant towards poor people, towards those who are less privileged than us, and we always form vague excuses. We always form senseless excuses to explain their condition, because we ourselves do not do anything for them. We only provide baseless excuses to explain their condition. The next paragraph starts with, in his hand is a steel canister, and it ends with, Sahib is no longer his own master. This might be one of the most important lines from the story, and the story of Sahib ends on this line itself. So we'll see what questions we have. Question 1. Is Sahib happy working at the tea stall? Obviously, Sahib is not happy working at the tea stall. As we come to know from author's acquaintance with the boy, we come to know that he has lost his carefree look. He is not happy. He is not wandering here and there on the streets happily as previously, because he is now bounded in the clutches of child poverty, child labor, and he has to do a work in a tea stall. Though he is provided all his meals and he is being paid 800 per month, he is not contented, he is not satisfied, because he is no longer his own master. Now someone else controls him. Why does the steel canister seem heavier than the plastic bag? Now this is a beautiful expression, beautiful contrast set up by the author, where she says that plastic bag seems heavier than the steel canister. In literal terms, obviously the steel canister is heavier than the plastic bag. We know what a steel canister is. A steel canister is basically a utensil which is commonly used to carry milk. So this steel canister is literally heavier than the plastic bag, but metaphorically also it is heavier for Sahib, because the plastic bag which he used to carry on his shoulder was his. He used to carry it due to his wish, but now someone else is controlling him. He works under someone else, and he is bounded in the clutches of child labor. Now he is not his own master. Why is Sahib no longer his own master? This is a very obvious question. Sahib is no longer his own master because now he cannot roam freely around the streets. He has to go to the tea shop every morning, work for the tea stall owner, get his meals, get his salary. Now he has a defined routine. He cannot do what he feels like. He cannot enjoy. That is why he is no longer his own master. He is under someone else's control. Why has Sahib's face lost all the carefree look? Because now he cannot roam freely, he cannot play on the streets, he cannot walk with his friends, someone else will control him, he is under someone else's authority, and now the burden of earning for his family has hovered around his head, and he cannot spend his time roaming freely. Now he will have to earn for his family. He cannot find excuse to roam freely. So that is why his face has lost all the carefree look, a carefree look that a child his age has on his face. The next paragraph is from the story, I Want to Drive a Car. And this paragraph starts with, Mukesh insists on being his own master, and it ends with, every other family in Firozabad is engaged in making bangles. What does Mukesh want to become? Mukesh obviously wants to become a motor mechanic, and he wants to learn about car driving, which is totally in contrast with what his family has been doing for generations, that is, making bangles. Question 2. How will Mukesh become his own master? Mukesh will become his own master if he follows his passion, if he breaks the God-given lineage, if he does not submit to his karma, to his destiny, just like his family members. Question 3. Why does Mukesh's dream seem to have no chance to be fulfilled? Because why do we feel that his dream, Mukesh's dream to become a motor mechanic, cannot be fulfilled so easily? We feel so because firstly he comes from a poor family, a narrow-minded family, and it is very difficult for people like him, for children like him, to go against the family profession and dare to do something, because there are so many risks, economic risk, societal risks. There are many risks which one have to take if one goes against the family profession, especially if we talk about people like Mukesh and their families. Question 4. What is Firozabad famous for? Firozabad is famous for making bangles, and to the author it appears as if this town itself makes bangles for all over the country. So the people, contrary to the bangles the people here make, the people are not famous. The bangle makers are not so famous as their bangles. They sacrifice their health, they sacrifice their lives, and they have no economic security. No one is there to help them. No one is there to help them uplift themselves out of their poverty. And they are stuck in that same cycle. Time has stopped in Firozabad, and every other family makes bangles. No one is ready to move out of their profession and do something better. So this is what Firozabad is famous for, apart from their profession of making bangles. The next paragraph starts with, it's his karam, his destiny, and it ends with, pushed by young men along the narrow lanes of shanty town. Question 1. What does the remark by Mukesh's grandmother signify? Now Mukesh's grandmother remarks that Mukesh cannot break his God-given lineage. He cannot dare to walk differently from the family profession, because it is his karam, it is his destiny. God has written his life, and it is destined that he will work into the bangle making industry. This is what his grandmother has remarked. This signifies that she has accepted her fate, she has given up, and she is not daring to dream just like Mukesh. This also tells us that she, like all the people of Firozabad, she is helpless and stagnant. She is stuck at the same place in her life. Question 2. The lives of bangle makers and the colors of bangles they make are parallels. Explain. The lives of bangle makers are totally shattered. They have no economic security. They are stuck in the same professions for generations and generations, and they are stuck in the vicious cycle. They are stuck in the never ending cycle of policemen, sahukars, and many influential people. And on one hand is the bangles they make. The bangles are colorful, they are the symbol of suhag, auspiciousness in marriage. Bangles are of different beautiful colors. And unlike these bangles, the lives of the people of Firozabad, they are not so happy, they are not so cheerful and colorful, because of all of these problems they have to face. Their lives are dull and lifeless. Question 3. How do people in Firozabad usually lose their eyesight? As we come to know, because of author's depiction of the people, of the conditions of the bangle making factories in Firozabad, we come to know that the bangle makers work in dingy cells. The cells do not have adequate light. They have very high temperatures, and due to this, the workers in the factories, the children, the adults, all of them, they lose their eyesight prematurely, because they have to work so closely, wielding the bangles together. As a result, they lose their eyesight uh, before their maturing age, and they suffer really hazardous health complications because of the conditions they work in. Question 4. What do we come to know about the people of Firozabad from these lines? We come to know that the people of Firozabad have submitted to their profession, they have submitted to their conditions, to poverty, to the profession of bangle making, and they fear to make an effort to organize themselves against all the miseries that they are facing. They are ready to live in extreme poverty, they are ready to live in the live, and they are ready that the generations that are coming, they also work in the bangle making industry. This is what they have accepted. They have accepted their fate, and they have accepted all the bad conditions that come to their way. But people like Mukesh, they are a ray of hope. They dare to dream and they dare to walk differently. Next paragraph starts with, listening to them, I see two distinct worlds. And it ends with, few airplanes fly over Firozabad. Question 1. Which two worlds is the author talking about? The author is talking about two worlds in this line. The first is the world of sahukars, politicians, bureaucrats, and all the influential and the strong people. And the second world is that of the poor bangle makers. The poor bangle makers who are stuck in the web of poverty, they cannot come out of it. They are stuck in making bangles, and they are burdened with caste stigma. No one is ready to help them because they belong to so and so caste. This is the vicious circle, this is the unending circle that they are stuck in. And on one hand, they are being suppressed by the sahukars, politicians, and all of the influential people who oppress them and do not do something for their development. Question 2. What does the author mean that daring is not a part of growing up? This phrase signifies that the people of Firozabad, daring is not a virtue in their personality. Daring is not a value in their personality, because they are not powerful enough to make a change. They are not powerful enough to go against the family profession of bangle making. Generations and generations have been working in the same profession. Some of them are not able to make a house for themselves and their family. They are not even able to educate their children. So that daring to do something good, that daring to do something different, is not a part of their personalities while they grow up. Question 3. Why does Mukesh stare at the ground in embarrassment when asked about planes? Mukesh stared in embarrassment because when the author asked him that, would you like to fly a plane also? So listening to this, Mukesh feels that flying a plane is out of my league. Obviously, it is out of my league. So he thinks that the author is making a sarcastic comment. So he feels embarrassed and looks over the ground. And he wants to learn about the cars he sees passing his towns. This is also a very beautiful comparison set up by the author. This signifies that Mukesh wants to learn what is in front of his eyes. You know, he has also in a way accepted that he will learn about the cars that he sees passing in the civilized towns. He is not ready to look up and see the planes that fly over his town. This also tells us that he has also submitted to the lack of resources and the condition he lives in. That is why he is embarrassed and looks at the ground. Question 4. Why do few planes fly over Firozabad? Few planes fly over Firozabad. This phrase has two meanings. The first literal meaning is obviously that few planes fly over Firozabad. There is no airport near Firozabad, so few planes fly over Firozabad. And the second meaning says that very few people dream here, and very few people get the chance here to get their dreams fulfilled, to move out of this vicious circle of poverty and fly high. And also this city is away from the hustle bustle of the civilized cities, and not many dreams come true just like those of the people in the civilized cities. And these people, they suffer the unnoticed pain. All of these explanations are offered for this phrase, few planes fly over Firozabad.